You're listening to Talking Law, the podcast where business owners just like you discover how to avoid legal landmines and build value using smart legal tips.
Hi, it's Joanna Oakey here and welcome back to Talking Law, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. Now, today we have on the show the fabulous Robyn Purdy here to talk to us all about coronavirus and the return to work guideline. And Robyn, this is a bit ironic, really, that we've decided to talk about return to work for you at the moment.
It is. Hi, Joe. Yes, it is. This is coming to you from the land of wishful thinking in Melbourne, where we are in stage 4/5 hard lockdown here. So I've prepared these return to work guidelines, looking forward to when we can implement them ourselves down here.
So it seemed like a good idea at the time when we decided that we'd have a podcast talking about the return to work guidelines. Obviously, the situation in our Melbourne office deteriorated substantially.
Very true, but still relevant for lots of our friends across the nation. So it's still very important to talk about this. And look, for us in Victoria, it's going to be coming up soon. It's going to be relevant for us. So it's good to get a bit of a feel about what's on the radar ahead of us anyway, I think.
That's good work, Robyn. This is optimism, right? Let's talk about it as though it's here.
Again, from the land of wishful thinking. Yeah. Let's get into it.
All right. So, look, what do you think the key standout items are for employers who are considering bringing their team back into the work environment now? What is it that they should be thinking about?
Look, I think the first thing to consider is that just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should. So we've seen now employees working really effectively from a home or remote working environment. So I think at the first instance, the important thing to think about is whether employees can continue to work from home. And it's recommended that if that can take place, then it should. Limiting the number of people in a workplace is obviously going to reduce risks of transfer. That being said, when we've got employees coming back to work, we do want to make sure that they come back in a really safe manner. And so it's important then to consider what we can do as employers to make sure that we keep our employees safe and to make sure that we keep anybody else that's visiting our workspaces safe as well.
No, I think you're absolutely right. It's interesting. I mean, and look, in the media, we've heard ad nauseum about many of the, many of the impacts of coronavirus, the whole work from home element in terms of the businesses' greater adoption of understanding how it can really work for an organisation. And it's certainly the case. I think I completely agree with you that rethinking whether or not you need everyone back in the office straight away just because you can, is that a good idea or not? I'm actually thinking of I probably shouldn't mention the name, but there's a large legal firm who have just in the last couple of weeks come under fire because they were, requiring their team to all come back to the office, and then there was a bit of an outbreak in the office, and look, whether it creates a risk for an organisation in terms of the arguments of providing a safe workspace is one thing, but it's also, I think this legal firm will probably reflect on the coverage of it as perhaps not a great step for its brand.
That's right. I mean, look, nobody wants to be the cautionary tale in the media, that's for sure. So taking these steps now before we get to that point is really important. And again, just because you can doesn't mean you should. We all know now that the traditional 9-to-5 working model of bums in seats in offices isn't necessarily going to always be the right way to go for businesses. And you can still have your employees working for you in a really effective and productive way just from a remote location. It's going to make the employees feel more comfortable, and ultimately you're going to get a better work product out of them.
But of course, we do have that pool of clients, and I'm sure listeners as well, where maybe remote working isn't even a possibility. So, for example, our clients are in manufacturing or in some form of distribution or, retail.
Of course.
And
you also have employees that themselves want to get back into the workplace. They might be
Yeah.
feeling a bit isolated at home. They want to get their kids back into a normal routine of parents going off to work. So there's lots of reasons there why having employees return to the workplace is a really good idea as well.
All right, let's get stuck into it then, Robyn. So return to work guidelines. Step number 1, think about whether you need to do it in the first place. But step number 2, if you're having some of your employees come back, what should we be doing?
Okay, so the obvious thing is, first of all, putting in place a plan to make sure that when you've got the employees coming back, that you're ready for that to take place. Don't just sort of have everybody come in on the first day back without thinking through how this is actually going to work. And when you're considering your plan, you want to be thinking about things like, first of all, making sure you've got the basic sanitary and hygiene practices in place, making sure that employees have got ready access to things like sanitizer, masks, face shields if necessary. That's the obvious stuff. In situations where you've got people sharing workplaces or workspaces, work equipment, something like a mouse or a keyboard, you might need to think about investing in extra equipment so that you're really limiting sharing as much as possible. Of course, you are going to have situations where sharing can't be avoided. Things like people using copiers. You're obviously not going to get separate copier machines for each person. So you want to make sure then that you're implementing really robust and thorough cleaning regimens within the workplace that goes across all of those high touch areas. Think about everything that you touch when you walk into a workplace, everything from the elevator button to the door handles, things in the lunchroom, copier equipment, and, things of that nature.
Absolutely. Okay, so what then would you say the best practices that, what's the bar that we should be aiming for here?
Well, geez, that's a really hard question. I think the bar's high. The bar's different for everybody, really, and it's going to ultimately depend on the nature of your own workplace and what you're doing there. I think what you want to be always having in the forefront of your mind is the guidelines that we're getting from the government, and in terms of things like physical distancing or social distancing, as we're now really familiar with this new term. What may have been the usual practice in terms of things like hot desking might not be appropriate anymore. Yeah. And you might have a situation where that was really the primary way that your office was set up. And so there might be some real changes there that need to be implemented. Depending on what kind of a workplace you have, you might need to consider investing in some internal infrastructure, redoing your reception area to provide shields for receptionists who may be having a high contact with a lot of people. You see that in places like supermarkets where they've got those shields around the cashiers and the checkouts now to protect, the staff that are working and doing their job. We all think about the obvious things like the sanitation and the cleaning and things like that, but it may also extend to offering employees car parking so that they're limiting the amount of time that they're travelling on public transport.
Yeah.
And staggering work start and finishing times so that you don't have a whole influx of people coming into the space at the same time. Investing in a second lunchroom or kitchenette so that you can separate your employees and ensure that physical distancing takes place.
And it's interesting talking about all of this because it does feel like a long list, even though I think you've summarised it really well. There are, of course, a lot of considerations here. It's while we're sitting down and stepping through each of these areas. But I think there are some, and it's not just about your obligation as an employer to provide a safe working environment. It's also about trying to reduce the level of risk of COVID or other infections coming into your organisation, then taking out your workforce for a period of time, which could be extraordinarily detrimental to any business. And of course, there's been a lot of discussion about A teams and B teams, splitting teams. If you must have people in the office, then having certain components of the team who are allocated to different time schedules to come in, and that can be very useful for an environment where you need staff to come in, such as, perhaps manufacturing. So I think that there's some interesting approaches that are being used. But one of the things that I have noticed recently in the media and that I've been reflecting on is that I think ultimately at the moment businesses are actually seeing less sickness within their staff because there's just been, because of the heightened protocols, the much greater social distancing, there's just a lot less spread of the usual germs and lurgies that cause sickness. So this is, it's perhaps a benefit, I don't know if you call it that, but certainly it's been a side effect of all of the new protocols that have come into place because of COVID that I think are leading to a lessening of sickness just across the board in a workplace. So I guess, it's important for employers to recognise that and to be balancing that, recognising that they're able to then balance that against some of the pain that they may feel that they're going through implementing all of these things that you're talking about, Robyn.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing reporting that influenza rates this year are the lowest that have been reported in quite some time. And that's not just because of an increase in people taking the flu vaccination, but because we're all following these very strict hygiene practices, the social distancing that's in place, people working from home, and also a little bit of a change in the mentality that, previously there was, I think, at least in some workplaces, this mentality and perception that if, you were sick, you just soldiered on, you came into work, you took a couple of Panadol, and you sucked it up and you got on with your job, and really there was that mentality of pushing through illnesses and not letting down employers. And now I think we're all coming to realise that that's not necessarily the way that we should be going about things, that we all have at least a social responsibility to one another and to our communities to not do that. And employers are taking a really strong front foot now by directing their employees, look, if you're sick, stay at home. Either work remotely or take the sick leave that's available to you, but it's no longer seen as appropriate now to be coming into workplaces when you're unwell. And that's not just in relation to COVID illnesses, but now, coughs, colds, sniffles,
Absolutely. Yeah.
God help us come hay fever season when we're all sniffling.
Right? Yeah,
Nobody will be in the office.
Yeah, I might be eating my words about the reduced sickness in the workplace. Yeah, that's it.
As a hay fever sufferer who starts very early in the season, I can foresee a lot of frowny faces at the supermarket with
become the pariah of yes.
Yes.
Robyn sneezes.
I'll put everybody on alert now that it's a hay fever sneeze and not a COVID sneeze.
If any of our clients are dealing with Robyn in a few weeks' time, it's hay fever.
It's hay fever
right now. That's it. Okay, well, look, that's great. I guess, are there any parting words from you here, Robyn?
Oh, look, I think really just Spec Legal's here to help. We've developed a very robust return to work policy and some guidelines that we're happy to help you with risk management in terms of concerns with employees coming back. Although I'm in Melbourne and not directly experiencing this myself, I am available to you to walk you through these things. So please don't hesitate to get in contact with us. We want everyone to stay safe. We want everyone to be COVID aware. We don't want people back in lockdown. So, let's get on with this together in a safe manner. We're here to help.
Brilliant. Robyn, you have just said it so well. There's nothing left for me to add. That's absolutely amazing. Robyn, I just want to say a massive thank you for coming on today.
My pleasure.
Well, that's it for this episode. Now, I hope you enjoyed the second and last half of this podcast series, and make sure you catch more valuable topics around this area and around the legal tips and tricks for law generally in Talking Law. Now, if you're interested in talking to our lawyers about anything related to this topic, then head over either to our website at aspectlegal.com.au or to the show notes where you can find a link straight to booking a free 15-minute discussion with our legal team. Well, that's it. Thanks again for listening in. This has been Joanna Oakey and Talking Law, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Talking Law. Tune in next time for more smart legal tips and tricks to keep you clear of those legal landmines. If you want to get a download of today's show notes, head over to talkinglaw.com.au.
Are you looking for a top quality legal team to assist you in your organisation? Aspect Legal is an innovative commercial legal practice that specialises in providing fast and professional services for their clients. If you'd like to chat about how we might be able to assist you, simply head over to our website at aspectlegal.com.au to book in a time for a free discussion with one of our lawyers.